Debt is a reality for many, and digging your way out can often seem overwhelming. Financial expert with Bromwich+Smith, Jasmine Mara, joining us with 3 things you need to know if you owe the bank money. Good morning, Jasmine.
Good morning, Courtney.
So the important thing here is that we are actually in control. Debt is something we can feel very out of control with, but it's important to maintain that position.
Absolutely. Debt is kind of this neutral thing. We celebrate it if we get a house or a new car, but it's really our ability to manage it. So we have the ability to control it, and getting ahead of it if we're starting to feel like it's spiraling is really important to call the folks that can help you.
So one key point is understanding the relationship. We are not friends.
Yes, that is definitely one way to put it. I think, obviously we develop wonderful relationships with our bank. It's a bit of an intimate relationship, really, because we're feeling so vulnerable and sharing our finances. But it is important to remember it is a business relationship. And so, they are the creditor, you are the debtor. And, when push comes to shove, a lot of people are surprised that the bank is not making those exceptions if things aren't going as planned. And so it's just important to remember and keep in mind that relationship is not a social relationship. It's a business relationship.
Right. And just because you pop by once a week and say hi and bring some coffee doesn't mean they're going to write off that loan for you.
That's right.
Okay.
Exactly. Yes, they're business too.
Yes. Second point, the right of set off. Explain this to us.
Yeah, so the right to set off. So let's say, for example, Courtney, I owe you $10 and you owe me $5. We might say something like, you know what, forget that. How about I just give you $5 and we'll call it even? That's an example of a right to set off, right? So we're kind of figuring out the difference and then settling the two between us. So the bank actually has that legal right as well. So if you have a bank account with savings, checkings, and then of course some debt, perhaps some loans, perhaps some credit cards, and you're not able to pay those debts as they become due, you should be aware that they legally have the right to set off by pulling the funds that you do have available to pay the debts that as they become due. So, something to think about is if you really are in that position, calling your bank to make sure you're able to negotiate a different settlement together. And if you're really unable to pay, perhaps it's a good idea to switch banks so they're not able to actually dip into those funds you do have.
That is fascinating. And I don't think a lot of people realize that they have access to those accounts.
Definitely not. Yeah, no, definitely not. But it is absolutely a legal right of the bank to do if it comes to that. And so if you're truly looking down that barrel, certainly we've seen lots of folks have, difficult experiences this year, whether it's a job loss or even a critical illness or perhaps a passing of a loved one. And these things happen. And so a lot of people do find themselves in that position. So it's a good thing to know, I think.
No kidding. Okay. Number 3 on the list is that banks actually foresee that some loans will go bad.
Yeah, I wanted to share this as a point because we at the restructuring company obviously work for Bromwich+Smith. We're licensed insolvency trustees, so we do help people restructure their debt, sort of being the middleman between the creditor and yourself. But we see so many people just filled with just so much shame and guilt if they're unable to pay their debts as they become due. And what I want to say is, the banks are very smart. Of course, nobody wants to be in a position where they can't pay, and the bank wants you to be in a position you can pay too. But sometimes we find ourselves in that situation. And so, give yourself a little bit of grace, understand that they as well know the risks of lending. And, that's why we pay interest on the things that we borrow. I guess debt forgiveness for me starts a little bit with that self-forgiveness. So this is really just about understanding that, they get it too. The sun will shine tomorrow. And if you really are struggling, make that call so you can have a plan to take back control, as we talked about earlier.
Well, some great expert financial advice. Thank you so much, Jasmine. And for more information, you can head to bromwichandsmith.com or follow along on the social media handles on your screen.
Thanks, Courtney.
Debt Real Talk with Bromwich+Smith. Free confidential debt relief consultations.